Recent high school graduate Tyler Evans couldn't believe his luck. His next-door neighbor, Mr. Darcy, was paying him a generous sum to check in on his house every day while he was away on a long business trip. Everything seemed perfect. Tyler was finally going to save enough for a down payment on the Chevy he'd always dreamed of, hoping to impress his sweet girlfriend, Sophia. He fantasized about taking her on a trip upstate before they figured out what colleges they'd attend, one last adventure before the unpredictable future took them down different paths. On a sweltering July day, Tyler left his parents' house to carry out his daily task. Whistling casually, he put the key in the lock and immediately felt something was off. A sudden unease filled him as cold shivers ran up his spine, much like the feeling after waking from a nightmare. Despite the ominous feeling, he continued inside, scanning the living room and concluding everything seemed fine. He decided a thorough check wasn't necessary. That's when he heard the unmistakable sound of a baby crying down the hallway. Startled and confused, he followed the wailing and was led into a nursery. Impossible, he thought. Mr. Darcy's wife and baby daughter had died in a car accident 2 years ago, and he'd mourned them ever since. Trying to reason with himself, he couldn't shake the nagging thought, how could this be? The face, he knew it all too well, was the same one he had seen every day before the crash. Tyler tried to push the thought away but couldn't ignore the unsettling truth. Desperately, he picked up the baby and held her to his chest. "Mama," the infant whimpered, as though calling for her mother. A strange sensation swept over Tyler, forcing him to put the baby down. His world spun as the house seemed to shake uncontrollably. Falling to his hands, Tyler looked down in horror. His once thick fingers now appeared slender with perfectly manicured nails, and his arms, once muscular, had shrunk into smooth, soft skin. He didn't feel pain, but fear surged through him. His body continued to change, his hair thinning and smoothing into porcelain-like skin. His screams grew louder as his body transformed. He could feel his body reshaping, his muscles melting away, replaced by soft curves. His jeans stretched uncomfortably as his hips widened, his rear growing fuller, and his feet shrinking into a smaller, feminine size. His face softened and shifted, his jawline and nose narrowing, eyes widening. Tyler stood, his shoulders forced back, as he felt his chest swell. His hands were soon filled with chest, straining against his shirt. His Adam's apple disappeared, his neck becoming smooth, and his shoulders thinned. A high-pitched scream escaped his lips, a sound he barely recognized as his own. He screamed again, more to convince himself that his deep voice was gone, replaced by a delicate, breathy tone. Tyler could already feel the next change beginning. Tyler desperately tried to hold on to whatever semblance of himself remained, gripping tightly, but something inside him shifted. His body rebelled, transforming in ways he couldn't understand. It felt like his insides were twisting and rearranging. His breath came in ragged gasps as his body continued to change uncontrollably. He felt a strange sensation in his clothes, and the fabric began to shift beneath his fingers. What had once been simple cotton boxers now transformed into something entirely different. The bottom layer twisted, becoming soft, smooth satin, adorned with lace, clinging to his hips and shaping his body in unexpected ways. The top layer rose higher, morphing into a girdle that further reshaped him, making his figure more feminine by the second. He felt his chest tighten, and before he knew it, the soft weight of a bra appeared, fastening securely around his chest. His cheeks flushed, and a wave of confusion and distress flooded over him. "Please," he cried, feeling a tear escape. "I can't take this anymore." His legs felt as though they were pulling together, and his once comfortable jeans fused into a tight garment that restricted him, making it nearly impossible to move. The fabric of his shirt began to change, shrinking and shifting into a V-neck with buttons, transforming into a dress with a patterned plaid design. It was as if the very clothes had come alive and decided for him what his new form should be. The house, which had been shaking only moments ago, fell still. The chaos within him had quieted, but the confusion and horror remained. Slowly, he stood, feeling the heels of his shoes rise, giving him a new height. His feet, now in high heels, felt foreign and awkward. He walked into the bathroom, his eyes wide in disbelief at his reflection. Not only had he become a woman, but the woman staring back at him was someone he had known, someone who had passed long ago. Panic overtook him. He couldn't believe it. He tried to rip off the dress, but it clung to him, unyielding. Desperation overtook him as he attempted to cut his hair, his hands shaking with fear, but it only grew back immediately. He tried to wipe the makeup from his face, but it wouldn't budge, as if his new reality was inescapable. He was losing his mind, feeling like he was trapped in some twisted nightmare, unable to think straight. In his hysteria, he wished for the comfort of his mother, but when he rushed to the front door, he realized he was locked inside. He kicked and screamed, desperately trying to escape, but it felt like battling an unmovable force. Falling to the floor in defeat, he threw a chair at the window, but it was futile. Tears streamed down his face as he realized the magnitude of what had happened. Fear gripped him tighter than ever before. In the midst of his panic, he suddenly heard the sound of a baby crying from somewhere in the house, a reminder that his reality had taken a turn that he couldn't comprehend. Once again, he tried to ignore it, sobbing quietly on the floor for several minutes until he couldn't bear the sound any longer. Reluctantly, he returned to the nursery, feeling completely alien and ashamed of his transformed body. He wondered how his family and friends would react if they ever saw him again. Would they ever see him again? He thought, disturbed by the idea, and questioned why his mind was drifting to such thoughts. Picking up the child, Tyler felt something stir inside him. It wasn't just the desire to quiet the baby, it was something deeper, something unfamiliar. He paced around the nursery, soothing the child and gently rocking her, while a strange sense of duty washed over him. Why was he doing this? He wondered. There were more important matters at hand, yet he couldn't stop. The baby fumbled with the collar of his dress, grunting as though trying to communicate. Instinctively, Tyler knew what the child wanted. Without thinking, he sat in the rocking chair, unbuttoned the bodice of his dress, and allowed the child to feed. Though his mind told him this was wrong, he couldn't deny the deep sense of rightness it felt in that moment. When the baby was done, Tyler looked down at her with a strong emotion that went beyond just concern. He jumped to his feet, panic rising in his chest. "No," he whispered, horrified by his actions. He quickly placed the child back in her crib, backing away as the weight of what he had just done sank in. His heart pounded violently in his chest as he rushed out of the nursery. He moved down the hallway, unaware of how gracefully he now walked in heels and a dress. Entering the sitting room, Tyler was momentarily confused about why he was there. Then he remembered, he had meant to go to the garden to check on the laundry. He stepped outside, gathered the clothes from the line, and felt a sense of disorientation, as though something wasn't right, as though parts of him were missing. "Hi, Mrs. Darcy," came a familiar voice from next door. "Lovely weather today, isn't it?" Tyler turned to see his mother peeking over the fence. A part of him wanted to run to her and explain everything, but an invisible force held him in place. Inside, he screamed for help, wanting desperately for her to see him for who he really was. But outwardly, all he could do was offer a smile and agree that it was indeed a beautiful day. Back inside the house, Tyler paced through the kitchen, unsettled and unsure of himself. His transformation into Mrs. Darcy felt distant, like a strange dream. He tried to think of Sophia, his girlfriend, but she seemed like a distant memory. He couldn't connect with her anymore. The realization terrified him. When he thought of his family, his parents, his older brother, they felt like strangers, like neighbors he barely knew. He checked on the baby once more, relieved to see she was still asleep. Looking at the clock, he decided it was time to start dinner. As he prepared a meatloaf, his mind suddenly snapped back to reality, and in a fit of frustration, he threw the dish against the wall. "Stop this! You need to stop this now," he shouted, pounding his fists against his temples. "Fight it, Tyler!" The crash of the dish woke the baby, and with a heavy sigh, he went to comfort her until she fell back asleep. As he looked down at the child, a warm, almost tender feeling overtook him. "My beautiful little girl," he whispered, gazing at her with an unfamiliar, overwhelming sense of affection. Without thinking, Tyler sighed as he looked at the mess he'd made in the kitchen. He quickly cleaned it up, then instinctively started over. Thoughts of Sophia, his family, and his past life seemed to fade away. Everything blurred into a stream of forgotten memories, slowly replaced by new ones that felt more vivid with each passing moment. Humming a tune, he peeled potatoes, his thoughts now focused on Mr. Darcy in a way he once reserved only for his girlfriend. He loved everything about his husband, even his imperfections. He couldn't wait for him to return after such a long business trip, hoping that the new deals would allow him more time at home and maybe even bring the possibility of having more children. The rumble of a car pulling into the driveway snapped Tyler into a new reality. Removing her apron, Mrs. Darcy adjusted her outfit and checked her reflection, making sure her hair was just right. She opened the front door and greeted her husband, unable to contain her excitement. "You're home," she exclaimed. "Yes, honey, I'm finally home," Mr. Darcy replied, setting down his briefcase. His shadow loomed over his wife as he pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. After what seemed like an eternity, he pulled away and whispered in her ear, "I can't wait to get you into bed tonight." He smiled widely and walked into the house. "Wow, something smells amazing," he said cheerfully. Mrs. Darcy stood in the driveway, her heart racing with excitement. She looked around at her perfect neighborhood, the sunshine, the white picket fences, the children playing by the fire hydrant, and for a moment, she thought how lucky she was to be married to Mr. Albert Darcy. As she turned to go back inside, she caught a glimpse of her neighbor Tyler, driving his new Chevrolet convertible with his girlfriend, Sophia, in the passenger seat. "Evening, Mrs. Darcy," Tyler called, waving. "Good evening, lovebirds. You two be careful in that thing." "We sure will," Sophia yelled back. Mrs. Darcy's heart swelled with warmth at the sight of the happy young couple. They reminded her of when she and Albert first started dating back in high school. It felt like so long ago, yet the time had passed in the blink of an eye. Now, they were starting their family, and she couldn't have been more excited. She felt like the luckiest woman alive. As she turned to head inside, Mrs. Darcy was startled to find herself crying. She didn't feel sad or in pain, yet the tears were real. She looked over her shoulder at Tyler and Sophia as they disappeared down the road. Dabbing the unexpected tears from her eyes, she briefly felt a wave of sadness, but it was fleeting. Right, she thought to herself, shaking off the odd feeling. Who's ready for some meatloaf? If you appreciated this story and wish to show your support, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel.